Bronny James was one of the most scrutinized draft picks we've seen in a while, but as the weeks have gone on, he's been putting up really solid numbers in the G League, and people are even saying that he's proving everybody wrong. He just had a 31-point game against the Portland Trailblazers affiliate Rip City, which included an absolute poster.
James down the paint! Bronny James!
It was his best game of the season. He hit multiple big-time shots, and although they won by 12, it was back and forth the entire game. Plus, he also had 3 assists, 2 steals, and only 1 turnover. Multiple other players on the Lakers were struggling to score, so Bronny was able to step up and go to work for himself, which isn't something he's known for either. Bronny has always been a pass-first player. Him showing the ability to go score when the team needs it is huge. However, this isn't the first time we've seen something like this from him. He had another 30-point game a little bit earlier in the year against the Valley Suns. He finished that game with 30 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists on 56% shooting. Plus, Bronny did all of that in just 25 total minutes. He has a few really good games so far this season. He already looks so much better right now than he did at the beginning. It's very clear at this point that his confidence is coming back, and he even said that after his game against Rip City. I know people gloss over it, but after going into cardiac arrest and having the whole world tell him that he shouldn't even be in the G League, it's pretty easy to see why he lost his confidence. But Bronny's only 20 years old and still has a ton of room to grow. He's played just 10 games in the G League so far, and only 3 of them have actually been in the regular season. Honestly, his most recent numbers in the regular season versus his numbers during the tip-off tournament shows the improvement that I'm talking about. And before I even mention them, yes, 10 games is a very small sample size no matter what. A few great games or a few bad games will heavily determine your entire stat line. But in the first 7 games during the tip-off tournament, he was averaging 13.4 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 4 assists a game, which are good numbers for a 55th overall pick in his first few games. The only problem was his efficiency was pretty bad. He shot 37% from the field, 21% from 3, and on top of all that, he was also throwing out 3 turnovers a game. I know a lot of people think that the G League is just full of garbage competition, but it's still a pretty big step up. We've seen several really good multiple-year college players struggle in their first games and not even last in the G League. But either way, it wasn't the best start at all. It wasn't until the regular season started for him to turn things up. Now that he's been in the system for a couple months and is actually starting to know his teammates, he's looking way better. In the 3 games that he's played in so far, he's averaging 23 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals a game, which is a massive jump from his tip-off stats, and yes, his percentages went up as well. He shot 43% from the field, which is still kinda low, but definitely better than what it was. Then he's shooting 46% from 3, which is a massive jump. And he even shot 89% from the free throw line while dropping his turnovers down to just 2 a night. Again, this is a 3-game sample size, so I don't expect him to average these numbers on a nightly basis, but hopefully for him it is the beginning of what's to come. It definitely takes a minute to translate as a guard, especially when you're not one of the top overall prospects. It's much easier to make the transition against better competition when you're a taller player. We see this with guards coming into the NBA all the time. But for Bronny, he's already fighting an uphill battle because he's a shorter guard. At the same time though, there are plenty of things that he does well that helps counter that. First of all, he's extremely athletic, which is the biggest difference maker for him on both sides of the ball. I'm not going to say that he's this lockdown defender that can guard multiple positions, but he can play really solid defense for someone that's only around 6'1". He's quick, but he's also pretty strong, so he can make it a lot more difficult for taller players to drive by him or back him down. Then on offense, it's a pretty similar situation. He can blow by certain defenders and has such a high vertical that he can go up in the paint on defenders that are several inches taller than him. Also, that vertical helps him a lot with his jump shot. Because he's shorter, he's easier to block, so to counter that, he jumps extremely high on certain shots to shoot over his defender. I just made a video on how Ace Bailey does the exact same thing, and also showed how in the NBA you see this a lot with guys like Zach LaVine. When everything's clicking, he really is a 3-level scorer and has a good feel for the game. He doesn't usually force bad shots, and although he still does throw a dumb turnover here and there, he usually knows what's open before it actually is. Of course, he still has his flaws, but you expect that with a 55th overall pick. I've been seeing people say that they like Bronny James, but he's just not pro ready, and honestly I agree. But at the same time, out of the 60 players drafted every year, how many of them are pro ready? Every year we see multiple first round picks that aren't pro ready. I mean, we see lottery picks every year that aren't pro ready. Do I think he benefited from a bit of nepotism? Yes, but if he's got potential and is willing to work hard every day to get better like we've seen, then honestly that's just a good late round pick. And if I'm Bronny and I have the chance to play with my dad while training with a way better organization than USC, then I'd take that every single time. I get he didn't prove himself in college, and honestly I didn't even think he would enter his name in the draft, but proving himself in the G League is fine too. And also, I don't get why people act like Bronny was this terrible player before he literally almost lost his life on the court. He was a McDonald's All-American and a consensus first-round pick before everything happened. Plus, before that, he was recovering from a torn meniscus. Bronny is just now getting back to 100%. For me, I like to see people doing well even if I get nothing from it. I like watching people succeed, especially when I feel like they're a good person. Bronny has been nothing but humble and has kept his head down throughout this entire situation. Even after he had that 30-point game against Rip City, all he cared about was the win, and that he was grateful anytime that he's playing basketball, walking, and breathing. He's LeBron's kid. He could literally be sitting on the couch for the rest of his life or partying with these Instagram models that every basketball player is obsessed with, but he's not. Instead, he's grinding it out in the G League, and for that, he will always have my respect.